Welcome back. I am Pemberton, and this is part 21 of Herodotus' Histories. The Scythians, we learn, will not borrow customs from anyone, and to prove it, Herodotus tells two grim little tragedies: the wise Anacharsis and King Scyles, both killed by their own people for slipping away to taste the gods and festivals of the Greeks. Then the great campaign opens. Darius throws a bridge of boats across the Bosphorus, another across the Danube, and pours his army into the empty north and leaves his Ionian Greek subjects holding that Danube bridge with strict orders and a knotted cord to count the days. Let us go on.
This is how they bury their kings. As for the other Scythians, when they die, their nearest relatives carry them around in wagons to their friends in turn. Each friend, when he receives the body, entertains those who accompany it, and they serve before the corpse about the same amount of everything as they serve before the others. In this way private persons are carried around for 40 days, and then they are buried. After burying them, the Scythians cleanse themselves in the following way. They soap their heads and wash them well. Then, for their bodies, they set up 3 stakes leaning toward one another, stretch woolen felt coverings around them, and close them as tightly as possible. Then they throw red, hot stones into a basin placed in the middle of the stakes and the felt coverings. They have hemp growing in their land, very much like flax except in thickness and height, for in these respects hemp is far superior. It grows both wild and cultivated. The Thracians even make garments from it, very like garments made of flax thread, so that anyone not especially familiar with it would be unable to decide whether the clothes were made of flax or hemp, and anyone who had never before seen cloth woven from hemp would suppose that the garment was made of flax. The Scythians take the seed of this hemp and creep under the felt coverings, then throw the seed onto the red-hot stones. It burns like incense and produces a vapor so thick that no vapor bath in Hellas could surpass it. The Scythians, delighted by the vapor bath, howl like wolves. This serves them instead of washing, for in fact they do not wash their bodies in water at all. Their women, however, pound the wood of cypress, cedar, and frankincense trees with a rough stone, pouring water in with it. Then with this pounded substance, which is thick, they plaster their whole body and also their face. Not only does a sweet smell cling to them because of this, but when they take off the plaster the next day, their skin is clean and shining. This nation is also very opposed to adopting foreign customs, rejecting even the customs of other tribes among themselves, and especially those of the Hellenes, as the story of Anacharsis first, and afterward that of Scyles, showed. As for Anacharsis, when he was returning to the homes of the Scythians after visiting many lands and displaying much wisdom in them, he sailed through the Hellespont and put in at Cyzicus. There he found the people of Cyzicus celebrating a very magnificent festival in honor of the mother of the gods. Anacharsis vowed to the mother that if he returned safe and sound to his own land, he would sacrifice to her with the same rites he saw the men of Cyzicus performing, and would also hold a night festival. When Anacharsis came to Scythia, he went down into the region called Hylea, which lies beside the racecourse of Achilles and is, as it happens, full of trees of every kind. There Anacharsis went and proceeded to perform all the ceremonies of the festival in honor of the goddess, carrying a kettle drum and wearing images hung about himself. One of the Scythians noticed him doing this and reported it to Scyles the king. The king himself came, and when he saw Anacharsis doing these things, he shot him with an arrow and killed him. Accordingly, at the present time, if one asks the Scythians about Anacharsis, they say that they do not know him, and they say this because he left his own country for Hellas and adopted foreign customs. As I heard from Timnes, the steward of Areopes, Anacharsis was the paternal uncle of Idantheos, king of the Scythians, and the son of Gonuros, son of Lycos, son of Spargopes. If then Anacharsis was of this house, let it be known that he died by the hand of his brother, for Idantheos was the son of Scyles, and Scyles was the man who killed Anacharsis. However, I have also heard another story, told by the Peloponnesians, that Anacharsis was sent out by the king of the Scythians, and became a student of Hellas. When he returned, they say, he told the king who had sent him that the Hellenes were all busy with every kind of cleverness except the Lacedaemonians, but that these alone knew how to exchange speech sensibly. This story, however, has been invented without any foundation by the Hellenes themselves. In any case, the man was killed in the way related above. So Anacharsis met this bad end because of foreign customs and association with Hellenes. Many years later, Scyles the son of Areopes suffered nearly the same fate. Areopes, king of the Scythians, had other sons, and Scyles was born to him from a woman of Istria, certainly not a native Scythian. This mother taught him the Greek language and Greek letters. Later in time, Areopes was treacherously brought to his end by Spargopes, king of the Agathocians, and Scyles succeeded to the kingdom. Along with the kingdom he also took his father's wife, whose name was Apoia. This Apoia was a native Scythian, and by her Areopes had a son named Oricos. When Scyles became king of the Scythians, he was by no means satisfied with the Scythian way of life, but was much more inclined toward Hellenic ways because of the upbringing he had received. He used to act as follows. Whenever he came with the Scythians in arms to the city of the Borysthenites, who say they are of Miletos, he would leave his force in the suburbs of the city, go inside the walls himself, and close the gates. Then he would lay aside his Scythian equipment and put on Hellenic clothing. Wearing it, he would walk through the marketplace with no guards or any other man accompanying him. Meanwhile, they watched the gates, so that none of the Scythians might see him wearing this dress. In other respects, too, he adopted Hellenic ways of life, and he also worshipped the gods according to Hellenic customs. After staying a month, or more than a month, he would put on Scythian dress again and depart. He did this many times. He also built himself a house in Borysthenes, and took a woman of the place into it as his wife. Since it was fated that evil should happen to him, it happened through this occasion. He desired to be initiated into the rites of Bacchus Dionysos, and just as he was about to receive the initiation, a very great portent occurred. In the city of the Borysthenites he had a very large and expensive house, which I mentioned a little before, and around it stood sphinxes and griffins of white stone. Zeus caused a thunderbolt to fall on this house, and the house was completely burned down, but Scyles nevertheless completed his initiation. The Scythians reproached the Hellenes for the rites of Bacchus, saying that it is not fitting to invent such a god, one who drives men into frenzy. So when Scyles had been initiated into the rites of Bacchus, one of the Borysthenites went off to the Scythians. "You Scythians laugh at us because we perform the rite of Bacchus, and because the god seizes us. Now this divinity has seized your king as well. He is joining in the rite of Bacchus, and he is maddened by the influence of the god. If you do not believe me, follow me, and I will show you." The chief men of the Scythians followed him, and the Borysthenites secretly led them into the town and set them on a tower. When Scyles passed by with a band of revelers, and the Scythians saw him taking part in the rite of Bacchus, they were deeply grieved. They went out and told the whole army what they had seen. After this, when Scyles was riding back again to his own dwelling, the Scythians chose his brother Octomasides as their leader. Octomasides was the son of the daughter of Tyres. They then rose in revolt against Scyles. When Scyles perceived what was being done against him, and for what reason, he fled for refuge to Thrace. Octomasides, learning this, marched against Thrace. When he arrived at the river Ister, the Thracians met him, and as they were about to join battle, Scythia sent a messenger to Octomasides. "Why must we test one another in battle? You are my sister's son, and you have my brother in your power. Give him back to me, and I will deliver your brother Scyles to you. Let neither of us put our armies in danger, neither you nor I." This was the proposal Scythia made to him through a herald, for a brother of Scythia, who had gone into exile out of fear of him, was with Octomasides. Octomasides agreed to this. By giving up his own mother's brother to Scythia, he received his brother Scyles in exchange. Scythia, when he received his brother, led him away as a prisoner, but Octomasides cut off the head of Scyles there on the spot. Thus the Scythians carefully guard their own customary observances, and such are the punishments they inflict on those who acquire foreign customs in addition to their own. I was not able to learn precisely how many the Scythians are, but I heard different reports of their number. Some reports say that they are very numerous, while others say that they are few, at least as regards the true Scythians. They did, however, give me this evidence of my own eyesight. Between the river Borysthenes and the Hypanes there is a place called Exampeos, which I mentioned somewhat earlier when I said that there was in it a spring of bitter water, whose water flows out and makes the river Hypanes unfit to drink. In this place there is set a bronze bowl, at least 6 times as large as the mixing bowl at the entrance of the Pontus, which Pausanias son of Cleombrotus dedicated. For anyone who has never seen that bowl, I will make the matter clear by saying that the bowl in Scythia easily holds 600 amphors, and the thickness of the Scythian bowl is 6 fingers. The people of the place told me that it had been made from arrowheads. Their king, they said, whose name was Herodotus, wished to know how many Scythians there were, and ordered every Scythian to bring 1 arrowhead, each from his own arrow. Anyone who did not bring one, he threatened with death. So a great multitude of arrowheads was brought. He resolved to make from them a memorial and leave it behind him, and from these, they said, he made this bronze bowl and dedicated it there in Exampeos. This is what I heard about the number of the Scythians. This land has no marvels except that its rivers are far larger and more numerous than those of any other land. One thing, however, besides the rivers and the greatness of the plain, shall be mentioned as something it has to show and something worthy of wonder. They point out a footprint of Heracles in the rock by the bank of the river Tirus, shaped like the mark of a man's foot, but 2 cubits long. This, then, is as I have said, and now I will return to the history I was about to tell at first. While Darius was preparing to go against the Scythians, he sent messengers assigning to some the provision of a land army, to others ships, and to others the bridging of the Thracian Bosphorus. Artabanos, son of Histastes and brother of Darius, urged him not to make the march against the Scythians at all, telling him how difficult the Scythians were to deal with. But since he did not persuade him, though he gave good advice, he stopped urging. When all his preparations had been made, Darius began to march his army out from Susa. Then one of the Persians, Oiabazos, asked Darius that, since he had 3 sons and all were serving in the expedition, one might be left behind for him. Darius said that because Oiabazos was a friend and had made a reasonable request, he would leave behind all the sons. Oiabazos was greatly delighted, supposing that his sons had been freed from service, but Darius commanded those in charge of such matters to put all the sons of Oiabazos to death. The sons of Oiabazos were left behind, killed on the very spot. Meanwhile Darius set out from Susa and arrived at the place on the Bosphorus where the bridge of ships had been made, in the territory of Chalcedon. There he boarded a ship and sailed to the so-called Ionian rocks, which the Hellenes say once moved back and forth. Taking his seat at the temple, he looked out over the Pontus, which is a sight well worth seeing. Of all seas, it is indeed the most marvelous in its nature. Its length is 11,100 furlongs, and its breadth, where it is widest, is 3,300. Yet the mouth of this great sea is only 4 furlongs wide. The length of the mouth, that is, of the narrow water called the Bosphorus, where, as I said, the bridge of ships had been made, is not less than 120 furlongs. This Bosphorus extends to the Propontis. The Propontis is 500 furlongs broad and 1,400 long, and it has its outlet into the Hellespont, which is only 7 furlongs wide at its narrowest point, though it is 400 furlongs long. The Hellespont runs out into that expanse of sea called the Aegean. I made these measurements in the following way. A ship, on average, completes 70,000 fathoms in a long day and 60,000 in a night. Now we know that from the mouth of the sea to the river Phasis, for here the Pontus is longest, the voyage is 9 days and 8 nights. This amounts to 111 myriads of fathoms, and these fathoms equal 11,100 furlongs. From the land of the Scythians to Themyscira on the river Thermodon, where the Pontus is broadest, the voyage is 3 days and 2 nights. This amounts to 3 myriads of fathoms, or 3,300 furlongs. Thus I have measured the Pontus, the Bosphorus, and the Hellespont, and their natures as I have described. This Pontus also has a lake emptying into it, not much smaller than the Pontus itself, and it is called Meotis and mother of the Pontus. After Darius had looked upon the Pontus, he sailed back to the bridge, whose chief builder had been Mandrakles, a Samian. After also looking upon the Bosphorus, he set up 2 pillars beside it of white stone, with letters cut on them. On one were Assyrian characters, on the other Hellenic, listing the names of all the nations he was leading with him. He was leading all those over whom he ruled. The whole number, apart from the naval force, was reckoned at 70 myriads, including cavalry, and 600 ships had been gathered. After these events, the Byzantines carried the pillars to their city and used them for the altar of Artemis or Thosia, except for one stone, which was left standing beside the temple of Dionysos in Byzantium, covered with Assyrian characters. The place on the Bosphorus where Darius made his bridge, as I conclude, is midway between Byzantium and the temple at the mouth of the Pontus. After this, Darius was pleased with the floating bridge and rewarded its chief builder, Mandrakles the Samian, with 10-fold gifts. From these gifts Mandrakles had a painting made as an offering, showing the whole scene: the bridge over the Bosphorus, King Darius sitting in a prominent seat, and his army crossing over. He had this painted and dedicated it as an offering in the temple of Hera, with this inscription: after bridging the fish-filled straits of the Bosphorus, Mandrakles dedicates this to Hera as a record of his work. He set a crown upon himself, brought glory to the Samians, and performed everything according to the mind of Darius. This was the memorial made for the man who constructed the bridge. After rewarding Mandrakles, Darius crossed into Europe. First he commanded the Ionians to sail into the Pontus as far as the river Ister. When they arrived at the Ister, they were to wait for him there and meanwhile make a bridge over the river. The chiefs of his naval force were the Ionians, the Aeolians, and the Hellespontians. So the fleet sailed between the Ionian rocks and made straight for the Ister. Then they sailed up the river a 2 days' voyage from the sea and set about bridging the neck, as it were, of the river, where the mouths of the Ister divide. Meanwhile Darius, having crossed the Bosphorus on the floating bridge, advanced through Thrace, and when he came to the sources of the river Taros, he encamped there for 3 days. The Taros is said by those who live near it to be the best of all rivers, both in other healing qualities and especially for curing diseases of the skin in men and horses. Its springs are 38 in number, all flowing from the same rock. Some are cold and others warm. The road to them is of equal length from the city of Heraion near Perinthos and from Apollonia on the Euxine Sea, a 2 days' journey by either route. This Taros runs into the river Contadestos, the Contadestos into the Agrians, and the Agrians into the Hebros, which flows into the sea by the city of Anos. When Darius came to this river and encamped there, he was pleased with it and set up a pillar there also with an inscription saying, "The head springs of the river Taros give the best and fairest water of all rivers," and to them came, leading an army against the Scythians, the best and fairest of all men, Darius son of Histastes, king of the Persians, and of all the continent. These were the words written there. Darius set out from there and came to another river, named Artescos, which flows through the land of the Odrysians. When he reached this river, he did as follows. He appointed a place for his army and ordered every man, as he passed by it, to place 1 stone in the appointed spot. When the army had done this, he marched away, leaving behind great mounds of stones. But before he came to the Ister, he first conquered the Getae, who believe in immortality. The Thracians who occupy Salmydessos and are settled above the cities of Apollonia and Messambria, called the Chimaei and the Nipsoi, surrendered themselves to Darius without fighting. But the Gitai, who are the bravest and most upright in their dealings of all the Thracians, showed stubborn resistance and were immediately subdued. Their belief in immortality is as follows. They hold that they do not die, but that whoever is killed goes to Salmoxis, a divinity whom some of them call Gebelizes. Every 4 years they send one of themselves, whichever man the lot selects, as a messenger to Salmoxis, charging him with whatever requests they have to make at that time. They send him in this way. Certain men appointed for this purpose hold 3 javelins, while others take hold of the man being sent to Salmoxis by both his hands and feet. First they swing him up, then throw him into the air so that he falls on the spear points. If he is pierced through and killed, they think the god is favorable to them. But if he is not killed, they blame the messenger himself, calling him a worthless man, and after blaming him, they send another. They give the charge to the man while he is still alive. These same Thracians also shoot arrows up toward the sky when thunder and lightning come, and threaten the god, because they do not believe that any god exists except their own. I hear from the Hellenes who live around the Hellespont and the Pontus that this Salmoxis was a man. He became a slave in Samos, in fact a slave of Pythagoras son of Anacharsis. Then after becoming free, he gained great wealth and afterward returned to his own land. Since the Thracians lived harshly and were rather simple-minded, this Salmoxis, being acquainted with the Ionian way of life and with customs more cultivated than the Thracians were used to seeing, since he had associated with Hellenes, and not only that but with Pythagoras, one of the ablest philosophers of the Hellenes, prepared a banqueting hall. There he received and feasted the chief men of the tribe, and meanwhile taught them that neither he himself, nor his guests, nor their descendants after them would die, but that they would come to a place where they would live forever and have every good thing. While he was doing what has been mentioned and saying these things, he was also making for himself a chamber underground. When the chamber was finished, he disappeared from among the Thracians, and went down into the underground chamber, where he continued to live for 3 years. They grieved at his loss and mourned for him as dead. Then in the 4th year he appeared to the Thracians, and in this way the things Salmoxis had said became credible to them. This is what they say he did. As to this matter in the underground chamber, I neither disbelieve it nor strongly believe it, but I think that this Salmoxis lived many years before Pythagoras. Still, whether there ever lived a man Salmoxis, or whether he is simply a native deity of the Gittae, let us now say farewell to him. These Gittae, then, having the customs I have described, were subdued by the Persians and accompanied the rest of the army. When Darius and the land army with him arrived at the Ister, and all had crossed over, Darius commanded the Ionians to break up the floating bridge and accompany him by land, together with the rest of the troops who were in the ships. The Ionians were just about to break it up and carry out his command, when Cos son of Erxander, commander of the might, Hellenians, spoke to Darius, after first asking whether he was willing to hear an opinion from someone who wished to state it. O king, since you are about to march into a land where no cultivated ground will be seen and no inhabited town either, let this bridge remain where it is, leaving as guards over it the same men who built it. Then if we find the Scythians and succeed as we desire, we have a way back, and even if we cannot find them, at least our way back is secure. I have never yet feared that we should be defeated by the Scythians in battle. Rather I fear that we may not be able to find them and may suffer some disaster while wandering about. Perhaps someone will say that in speaking this way I am speaking for my own advantage, so that I may remain behind. But in truth, O king, I am putting forward the opinion I found best for you, and I myself will accompany you and will not be left behind. Darius was very greatly pleased with this opinion and answered him in these words. Friend from Lesbos, when I have returned safely to my house, be sure that you appear before me, so that I may repay good counsel with good deeds. After saying this, Darius tied 60 knots in a thong, called the despots of the Ionians to speak with him, and said, Men of Ionia, know that I have given up the opinion I first declared about the bridge. Keep this thong and do as I shall say. As soon as you see me go forward against the Scythians, begin from that time and untie one knot each day. If I am not here within this time, and you find that the days marked by the knots have passed, then sail away to your own lands. Until then, since our resolve has been changed in this way, guard the floating bridge, showing every diligence to keep it safe and watch over it. By acting in this way, you will do me a very acceptable service. Thus Darius spoke, and he hastened forward on his march. In front of Scythia, toward the sea, lies Thrace, and where a bay is formed in this land, Scythia begins. Into this bay the Ister flows out, with the mouth of the river turned toward the southeast wind. Beginning at the Ister, then, I am about to describe the coastland of true Scythia, with regard to its measurement. The original land of Scythia begins at once from the Ister and lies toward midday, and the south wind, extending as far as the city called Carchanitis. After this, the part still lying on the coast of the same sea is a mountainous country running out toward the Pontus, and it is occupied by the Tauric race as far as the peninsula called the rugged Chersonese. This stretches to the sea that lies toward the east wind. 2 sides of the Scythian boundaries run along the sea, one along the sea on the south, and the other along the sea on the east, just as with Attica. In truth, the Tauri occupy a part of Scythia that very much resembles Attica. It is as if in Attica some other race, not the Athenians, occupied the hill region of Sunion, supposing that region to project farther into the sea, the region cut off by a line from Thoricos to Anaphlistos. Such, if we may compare small things with great, is the shape of the Tauric land. For anyone who has not sailed along this part of the Attic coast, I will make it clear by another comparison. It is as if in Iapygia some other race, not the Iapygians, had cut off for itself and occupied that end of the land bounded by a line running from the harbor of Brundisium to Taurus. In mentioning these two similar cases, I am also suggesting many other things to which the Tauric land bears resemblance. After the Tauric land come Scythians again, occupying the parts above the Tauroi and the coasts of the Eastern Sea, that is, the regions west of the Cimmerian Bosphorus and of the Maeotian Lake, as far as the river Tanais, which runs into the corner of this lake. In the upper parts that stretch inland, Scythia is bounded, as we know, first by the Agathioceans, beginning from the Ister, then by the Neroi, afterward by the Androphagoi, and lastly by the Melanchlinoi. If Scythia is viewed as a four-sided figure, with two of its sides bordered by the sea, its boundary lines are equal to one another in each direction, the side that stretches inland and the side that runs along the sea. From Ister to the Borysthenes is a journey of 10 days, and from the Borysthenes to the Maeotian Lake is 10 days more. The distance inland to the Melanchlinoi, who are settled above the Scythians, is a journey of 20 days. I have reckoned a day's journey at 200 furlongs. By this reckoning, the cross lines of Scythia would be 4,000 furlongs long, and the perpendicular lines, stretching inland, would be the same number of furlongs. Such is the size of this land. Meanwhile, the Scythians considered that they could not repel the army of Darius alone in a pitched battle, so they sent messengers to the peoples living near them. The kings of these nations had already gathered and were taking counsel with one another, since so great an army was marching toward them. Those who had come together were the kings of the Tauroi, Agathioceans, Neroi, Androphagoi, Melanchlinoi, Gelonians, Budinoi, and Surmatai. The Tauroi have the following customs. They sacrifice to the maiden both shipwrecked persons, and those Hellenes whom they capture by putting out to sea against them. Their manner of sacrifice is this. After making the first offering from the victim, they strike his head with a club. Some say they push the body down from the top of the cliff, for the temple is placed on a cliff, and set the head up on a stake. Others agree about the heads, but say that the body is not pushed down from the cliff, but buried in the earth. The Tauroi themselves say that the divinity to whom they sacrifice is Iphigenia, daughter of Agamemnon. Whatever enemies they have conquered, they treat in this way. Each man cuts off a head and carries it away to his house. Then he impales it on a long stake and sets it up high above his house, generally above the chimney. They say that these heads are suspended above as guards to preserve the whole house. This people lives by plunder and war. The Agathioceans are the most luxurious of men, and for the most part they wear gold ornaments. They also have intercourse with their women in common, so that they may all be brothers to one another, and being nearly related, may feel no envy or malice against one another. In their other customs they have come to resemble the Thracians. The Neroi practice the customs of the Scythians. One generation before the expedition of Darius, it happened that they were forced to leave their land altogether because of serpents. Their land produced serpents in great numbers, and still more fell upon them from the desert country above their borders. At last, being hard-pressed, they left their own land and settled among the Budinoi. These men would seem to be wizards. The Scythians and the Hellenes settled in the Scythian land say that once every year each of the Neroi becomes a wolf for a few days, and then returns again to his original form. For my part, I do not believe them when they say this, but they say it nevertheless, and they swear to it besides. The Androphagoi have the most savage customs of all human beings. They acknowledge no rule of right and observe no customary law. They are nomads and wear clothing like that of the Scythians, but they have a language of their own, and of all these nations, they alone are man-eaters. The Melanchlinoi all wear black clothing, from which they also take their name, and they practice the customs of the Scythians. The Budinoi are a very great and numerous people, all very blue-eyed and fair-skinned. In their land a city of wood is built, whose name is Gelonos. Each side of its wall is 30 furlongs long and also high, and the whole is made of wood. Their houses too are wooden, and so are their temples. There are temples in it of Hellenic gods, furnished in Hellenic fashion with sacred images, altars, and shrines, all made of wood. Every other year they keep festivals to Dionysos and celebrate the rites of Bacchus. The Gelonians were originally Hellenes, and they moved from the trading stations on the coast and settled among the Budinoi. They use partly the Scythian language and partly the Hellenic. The Budinoi, however, do not use the same language as the Gelonians, nor is their way of life the same. The Budinoi are natives of the soil and are nomads, and they alone of the nations in these parts eat fir cones. The Gelonians, by contrast, till the ground, eat grain, and have gardens. They do not resemble the Budinoi at all, either in appearance or in skin color. Nevertheless, the Hellenes call the Budinoi also Gelonians, though this is not the right name for them. Their land is everywhere thickly overgrown with forests of every kind of tree. In the densest forest there is a large and deep lake, and around it are marshy ground and reeds. In this lake they catch otters, beavers, and certainly other wild animals with square-shaped faces. The The fur of these animals is sewn as a fringe around their skin coats, and their testicles are used by them for curing diseases of the womb.
And there we leave Darius marching deeper into a land that seems to hold nothing but grass and sky, and the Ionians counting the knots in their cord by the river. Next time, in part 22, where the Sauramati came from, which means the Amazons, and how the Scythians, refusing to fight a battle they could win, very nearly destroyed the greatest army in the world without one. Mind the footnotes, and beware the folly.